I agreed to marry Yelena Belova and Antonia Dreykov, and I said I need to go back home, I have to attend high school so I can graduate. And then Antonia Dreykov said, did he really just say he's a minor? And then Yelena Belova walked away and said he's 18 and I enjoyed fucking him very much and I will continue to do so, and I assume you will too, Antonia, because honestly that's the most beautiful man I've ever seen, haven't you? And Antonia Dreykov said I love everything about him. And then I went back to Jennifer Walters' home and I saw her talking to Bruce Banner and I said hello Bruce, and then Bruce Banner said hi Peter, how are you kid? And then Jennifer said Bruce, Peter Parker is my boyfriend that I was talking about. And Bruce looked at me and then at Jennifer Walters and he said, Jen, what have you done? You had sex with a high school boy. And she said, wait Bruce, he's 18, he turned 18 actually the day before I started having sex with him. And Bruce said with relief, oh thank God, I thought you were going to be in big trouble, Jennifer. And then Jennifer said, no, I got this big handsome man to keep me honest. And I asked Jennifer Walters, how long is your cousin Bruce Banner going to be here? And she said not long. And then Bruce said nervously, I have to go now, see you guys later. And then Jennifer Walters said, wait Bruce, what's wrong? And then Bruce said, I don't want to impose as your guest and I know what being a couple means and all that. And then Jennifer said, okay, see you later Bruce. And then outside Jennifer's apartment Bruce said, good for you Jennifer. And he also felt sad when he thought about his former girlfriend Betty Ross. And then I teleported in front of Bruce and I said, I can help you with your problem and I can give you absolute command over your powers. And then I touched his head and I told him to say switch to Hulk or Banner. And then I said, now you can completely control your powers Bruce by commanding them and you can stop worrying about everything, now go make love to Betty Ross. And he said switch to Hulk, and then he said switch to Banner, and then he said wow, this actually works. And I said yes, and it's permanent, you can stay human for as long as you want and you're now in control of both forms, not some child inside you. And I said go home Bruce and marry Betty Ross, you will be fine, I promise. And then he hugged me and he said thank you so much, you might have just saved my life. And I said no one who's good should be alone Bruce Banner. And then I said now I'm going back in there to make love to Jennifer, and I walked back into the apartment. Jennifer Walters was now in her She-Hulk form and she now has on a custom thong and a great bra, and then she took off her bra and then I walked over to her and I made myself bigger like usual, and I even made my penis a bit bigger and a bit taller, and I started kissing Jennifer all over her face and body passionately, and her Hulk instincts always kind of take over a bit. And I said I want to marry you today if possible, but I also need to tell you that polygamous marriage is legal in the United States and I will have to do a polygamous marriage so I can marry you first, but I want you to know that I also intend on marrying other women. And I also need to tell you Jen that I can magically clone myself infinitely. And she said okay, show me your magic clones. And then she got very aroused and excited when she saw my naked clone and she said keep that clone here please, I want to use him during sex. And then she got on top of my member, she started riding it non-stop and she said tell your clone to stick it in my butthole. And I said yes ma'am. And then Jennifer Walters started moaning loudly and growling and she said oh yes baby fuck me. And then I said oh my god baby, your body feels so good, I'm going to come. And then I came in her vagina also, and then my clone came in her butthole, and then my clone stuck his fingers in her butthole and got my seed out, and she licked all my clone's semen off his fingers, and I also did the same thing to her and she ate my cum. And because of that I continued to have sex with her for the whole day, and the next day she and I got married. And then I started to get married to many other women in a polygamous marriage, and I wasn't even 20 years old yet. The second woman I married was Michelle Jones Watson, and then I married Natasha Romanoff, and since she was staying with me and my parents, she had sex with me later that night in my bedroom, and even I was surprised at how often Natasha Romanoff wanted to have sex with me. The woman is an absolute hornball, but I love that about her, and I said I'm not letting anything bad happen to you Natasha Romanoff, you're my special girl.